Hello everyone! Welcome back to Easy English Stories for Learners. Today, we're talking about a story that many people around the world experienced: school closures during the COVID-19 pandemic. Have you ever wondered how families learned at home or what challenges they faced? Let's find out, and don't forget to think about your own experiences and share your thoughts with us.
Thanks for tuning in. In today's episode, we'll listen to a conversation about how different families managed learning when schools were closed. We'll also explain some useful vocabulary words as we go. So, get comfortable and let's start our story together.
When the COVID-19 pandemic struck in early 2020, politicians faced many difficult choices. One of the hardest was whether or not to close schools. Soon, it became apparent that they had no choice.
Right. And according to the United Nations, at the peak of the pandemic that year, an estimated 1.6 billion children were affected by school closures. That's a huge number, almost 1 in 5 people on Earth.
Now, before we continue, let's pause and explain the word pandemic. A pandemic is a disease that spreads quickly across a large area, often the whole world. COVID-19 was a pandemic because it affected almost every country.
Exactly. And closure means something is closed or stops operating. So, school closures are times when schools are not open for students.
Some families found that homeschooling was a useful substitute for attending school in person. Let's explain that word: substitute.
A substitute is something used instead of another thing, like a replacement. For example, if you don't have sugar, you might use honey as a substitute when cooking.
That's a great example. So, homeschooling became a substitute for regular school during the pandemic. Parents taught their children at home instead of sending them to school.
And this change wasn't easy for everyone. Some parents could help with their children's learning, but for others, it was much more challenging.
Parents who worked in white-collar office jobs were often able to work from home. This meant they could homeschool their children daily and maintain some educational continuity.
Let's look at the word maintain. To maintain means to continue to have something or to keep something going. For example, you maintain your health by eating well and exercising.
Another important phrase is educational continuity. This means making sure learning continues even when things are difficult, like during a pandemic.
So, white-collar workers, people who usually work in offices, could often maintain this continuity because they could stay home and help with schoolwork.
For parents who worked in blue-collar jobs like bus drivers or factory workers, homeschooling was often not feasible. Let's explain feasible.
Feasible means something is possible or can be done. If something isn't feasible, it cannot be done easily or at all. For example, it's not feasible to fly without an airplane.
That's right. Many blue-collar workers couldn't work from home, so they couldn't homeschool their children. Instead, they had to find someone to care for their kids during the day.
In the UK and other countries, some of these workers were called key workers. Their children were allowed to attend school in small classes, even when schools were mostly closed.
Remote learning also helped reduce some effects of school closures. Teachers used programs like Zoom or Google Classroom to monitor students' progress and give advice.
Let's pause to talk about monitor. To monitor means to watch or check something carefully. For example, doctors monitor patients to make sure they are healthy.
These programs made it easier to set tasks, share books, and teach online. But not all students had access to computers or the internet, so remote learning wasn't always feasible.
And, unfortunately, public libraries, which often provide free books and internet, were also closed because of the virus. Speaking of that, do you know what viruses means?
A virus is a tiny germ that can make people or animals sick and can spread from one to another. COVID-19 is an example of a virus. School closures had negative consequences for many students. Schools are not only places for formal education, but are also crucial to behavioral development.
Let's explain crucial. If something is crucial, it is extremely important or necessary. For example, water is crucial for life.
At school, children learn to interact and socialize, which helps define their relationships. Now, define means to say what something is or describe its limits.
So, schools help define how children grow and connect with others. During the pandemic, many miss this important experience.
Teachers are trained professionals, and all children benefit from their personal guidance. Let's pause to explain professional.
A professional is someone who does a skilled job. For example, a teacher, doctor, or lawyer is a professional because they have special training.
Without professional guidance, children may develop more slowly. Teachers help students learn and give the right advice at the right time.
And that's why having professional teachers is so important for every child's growth and learning.
Many less fortunate children rely on free school meals. Without enough food, their nutrition and intellectual development may have suffered.
Let's talk about nutrition. Nutrition is getting the right kind of food to grow and be healthy. Without good nutrition, it's harder to learn and grow strong.
And intellectual means something related to thinking and understanding. Good nutrition helps children do better at school and think clearly.
Sadly, during school closures, some children didn't get enough food at home, which affected both their physical and intellectual development.
For some families, the journey through the pandemic was rough, and it may take years to see the long-term effects. Many poorer children may have fallen further behind, making the cycle of disadvantage continue.
Let's pause to explain cycle. A cycle is a group of events that follow each other and often repeat. For example, the cycle of seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter.
In this story, the cycle of disadvantage means that children who start with less support might keep facing problems as they grow up, making it hard to break out of poverty.
This is why it's so important to find solutions that help every child, no matter what their situation is, so the cycle does not continue.
Now, let's review the vocabulary words we learned today. We'll give you each word and an easy example. Ready?
Substitute, a replacement. For example, I used a pencil as a substitute for a pen.
Maintain, to keep or continue. For example, it's important to maintain good habits.
Feasible, able to be done. For example, it's not feasible to travel to the moon without a rocket.
Virus, a germ that makes people sick. For example, the flu is caused by a virus.
Crucial, very important. For example, sleep is crucial for good health.
Define, to say what something is. For example, can you define the word friend?
Professional, a person with special training. For example, my sister is a professional nurse.
Nutrition, eating the right foods. For example, good nutrition helps you grow.
Intellectual, related to thinking. For example, puzzles are good for your intellectual skills.
Cycle, a repeating group of events. For example, the cycle of day and night never stops. Now, here's a question for you. During the pandemic, many students had to learn at home. What was your experience like? Did you find it easy or difficult? What did you miss most about school?
Please share your thoughts with us in the comments or talk about it with a friend. Thinking about these questions can help you practice your English and understand the story better.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for joining us. Remember, learning English takes time, but every story and every word helps you get better.
Keep practicing. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and try to use new words in your own sentences every day. The more you use English, the easier it will feel.
We hope you feel inspired to keep learning. Until next time, stay curious, stay positive, and keep speaking English with confidence.
Goodbye, everyone. Remember, your effort today is the key to your progress tomorrow. See you soon on Easy English Stories for Learners.